"Enjoy the company polo and gift card," she said, all nasal and smug like her trust fund hadn't taught her basic respect. That's how I knew it was happening. Madison Sterling, the CEO's nepotism experiment in designer flats, was firing me in front of the whole damn company. I'm James Reynolds, 45 years old, and I've been building enterprise systems since this kid was learning to drive. 20 years of keeping the lights on, fixing what others broke, and making sure the company actually worked behind all the buzzword presentations. And here I was, getting canned by someone who thought legacy systems was a dirty word. No warning, no performance review, no private conversation. Just bright corporate theater during our quarterly all-hands meeting, right between announcements about the new office kombucha flavors and Q3 burn rate projections. I stood there, hands folded, watching her pretend to read from a script she definitely didn't write herself. "James has been a valued member of the Innovex family," she cooed, like she wasn't about to gut me with a smile. "But due to evolving technical priorities and our digital transformation initiative, we've decided to move in a different direction." She reached into one of those stupid swag boxes we give to interns and pulled out a company polo shirt. My name was scrawled on the tag in Sharpie like I was a lost and found item. Tucked inside was a $75 gift card to some trendy tech cafe that probably served $8 coffee in mason jars. "Oh," she added like she'd forgotten the best part. "And unfortunately, your transition package reflects our current optimization framework, so it won't include the standard senior engineer severance." Optimization framework. Lady, I wrote half the systems that made optimization possible around here, but I could feel 48 heads swivel in slow motion. Sales guys awkwardly checking their phones, the marketing team pretending to take notes. The only one who didn't flinch was our CFO, whose expression read loud and clear, "Don't drag me into this mess." So I smiled, that same calm professional smile I'd perfected over 2 decades of dealing with corporate nonsense. I took the polo shirt like it was radioactive, held it up, felt its cheap polyester judgment. "Thanks for the memories," I said. My voice was steady, even friendly. Not because I wasn't furious, but because fury is for amateurs, and I'm a professional. I walked out without slamming a door. That's important. They wanted a meltdown, wanted some old-timer loses-it story to share in Slack channels. I gave them nothing, just the quiet click of my dress shoes on polished concrete and the faint smell of that vanilla air freshener they pumped through the HVAC to cover up the rot. Here's what nobody noticed. HR didn't have me sign anything. No exit documentation, no NDA reminder, no acknowledgement that my termination was fair and legal. Just a cheerful auto-generated email saying my access would be deactivated by 5 p.m. and good luck in future endeavors. That's because someone in that room knew this wasn't clean. Madison had been gunning for me since she oozed into her role as Chief Innovation Officer, which basically meant professional disruptor with access to engineering budgets. She didn't like that I had influence with the actual technical team. She hated that I had institutional memory, and she despised that people came to me when her latest transformation initiatives broke something critical. When I'd flagged some irregularities in the Q3 consulting expenses, like $28,500 labeled Digital Transformation Advisory that mysteriously mapped to payments going to her boyfriend's newly formed LLC, HR told me to focus on forward-thinking solutions instead of legacy audit practices. And now here we were. I walked straight past the glass offices where executives pretended not to look, past the break room where someone was cutting cake for another successful sprint, past the security desk where the guard offered me a sympathetic nod like I'd been diagnosed with something terminal. Outside, the Bay Area sky was its usual indifferent blue. I sat in my car and stared at that polo shirt for a full minute. Then I popped the trunk, tossed it in next to my emergency jumper cables, and pulled out my personal laptop. The one I never connected to company Wi-Fi, the one with a very specific file stored in a very specific encrypted folder. The file was titled Clause 12.7b trigger.pdf because Madison might have fired me, but I was the one who'd built the technical foundation she was standing on, and she had no idea what she'd just done. 3 weeks before the polo shirt hit the fan, I'd been sitting in a booth at Murphy's Tavern, the kind of place that served honest beer without artisanal pretensions. Laptop open, pint of Guinness balanced carefully next to my keyboard. Across from me sat Patricia Hoffman, my attorney. Real attorney, not some corporate yes person they wheel out when someone needs to feel heard. Patricia, 54, practical as a socket wrench and twice as reliable. She leaned over my screen and whistled low through her teeth. "You sure you want to do this, James?" I sipped my beer and nodded. They've been treating me like a contractor while expecting owner-level commitment. Time I got some insurance. The insurance in question was a licensing clause buried so deep in our vendor consolidation contract, it practically wore camouflage. See, while everyone was focused on Madison's flashy digital transformation presentations and new Slack integration workflows, I'd spent 8 months rebuilding our legacy system interfaces, creating the bridges that kept 20 years of enterprise data flowing smoothly. Problem was, those bridges weren't just company assets. I'd been smart about it. Built the integration platform through my personal consulting LLC, which had been on our approved vendor list for years, listed under Systems Architecture and Platform Integration Services. Nobody questioned when the monthly invoice structure shifted slightly. Nobody blinked when I submitted statements of work that clearly delineated licensing rights to my LLC, not the company. And nobody, especially not Madison, bothered reading the legal language about license revocation upon improper dismissal of designated key technical personnel. It sailed through legal review like a paper airplane through an open window. Rubber-stamped, filed, forgotten. The clause was elegant in its simplicity. If the company terminated me without following proper technical review procedures and documented performance cause, the perpetual license would self-revoke immediately. No lawsuit, no messy arbitration, just lights out on critical systems. Was it petty? Maybe. Was it legal? Absolutely. Was it visible to anyone not specifically looking for it? Not a chance. Madison never suspected a thing. She was too busy optimizing synergy with wellness initiatives and emoji reactions to quarterly reports. The day I finalized that contract, she was posting Instagram stories about her morning meditation routine. Meanwhile, I was buying digital insurance that could implode her entire fake innovation kingdom. I tested the clause structure with Patricia first, ran it through compliance simulation with our external legal team. Not a single red flag. Everything checked out clean. All signatures legitimate. Even the procurement team, bless their overworked souls, logged it into the vendor management system like it was just another routine service agreement. That's the thing about being quiet and competent. People assume you're harmless. They forget that the quiet ones built the infrastructure they're standing on. After that meeting, I printed exactly 1 copy of the final agreement, stored it in my home safe along with my mortgage papers and insurance policies. The digital version got AES 256 encryption and triple backup, 1 in secure cloud storage, 1 on an encrypted drive in my desk drawer, and 1 on a USB stick hidden inside an old coffee mug in my workshop. I didn't want to use it, understand that clearly. I liked my work, respected most of my colleagues, and believed in what we were building. I didn't love the politics or the way Madison treated vendor budgets like her personal experimental fund, but I loved the systems, the problems, the elegant solutions. But every time Madison smiled with those perfect veneers and called me Jamesy in meetings like I was her favorite uncle, something twitched behind my professional facade. And when I caught her routing payments to that consulting LLC, the one registered to someone named Jason Parker who happened to be her boyfriend and happened to have 0 technical credentials, I knew the countdown had started. Thing about clauses like 12.7b, they're quiet bombs. Nobody hears the ticking until it's too late. And the beautiful part? That clause wasn't buried under legal jargon or hidden behind NDAs. It was right there in plain English, 1 paragraph, titled Reversion of Use License Upon Improper Termination. Might as well have been labeled, push this button if you're dumb enough to fire me without reading. So when HR handed me that $75 gift card and a discount polo shirt and told me they were streamlining technical resources, I didn't cry or scream or threaten lawsuits. I just smiled and thought, activate clause. Madison had floated into Innovex like she'd been airdropped from a lifestyle influencer's vision board. Designer laptop bag, daily affirmations, and the supreme confidence of someone who'd never had a real performance review in her life. No resume worth mentioning, no track record, just a press release announcing her as Chief Innovation Officer. A role that sounded important, but had 0 accountability. She took over the corner office with motivational posters and essential oil diffusers, then took aim at what she called legacy thinking patterns. It started small. My monthly architecture reports accidentally dropped from meeting agendas. My name removed from critical decision threads in Slack. Budget approvals suddenly required sign-off from her innovation committee, which somehow always included her yoga classmates who'd landed consulting gigs. I'd walk into planning sessions and find my usual seat had been replaced with a yoga ball. Literally. Someone had wheeled out the chair I'd used for 3 years and substituted exercise equipment. Madison didn't attack directly. That would have required spine. Her weapons were passive aggression and buzzword artillery, wielded like a toddler with glitter glue. If I raised technical concerns in meetings, she'd say, "Let's reframe that energy towards solutions." Or worse, I think James's perspective reflects some scarcity mindset patterns. Scarcity mindset. I was trying to prevent system crashes while she was billing $900 for team alignment workshops that were basically drum circles in the conference room. The vendetta was obvious. My competence made her insecurity visible. Every time I calmly explained why her latest initiative would break something critical, like the time she wanted to migrate our entire customer database to a blockchain platform, because immutable records sound super secure, she'd get this tight smile and nod like I was adorable but outdated. So I started documenting everything. Every deleted message, every suspicious vendor payment, every budget anomaly. I created folders, color-coded, time-stamped, backed up to multiple secure locations. I even screen-recorded one video call where she suggested we could improve system performance by manifesting more bandwidth through positive team energy. But I didn't escalate. Not yet. HR invited me to a communication-style alignment session. Just a quick sit-down to bridge generational perspectives, they said. I smiled. A big one. The kind that makes HR people nervous. My communication style is fine, I said. I'm just not compatible with incompetence. Madison didn't want alignment. She wanted elimination. I could see it happening in real time the way she slowly rewrote my contributions in company communications. In the monthly newsletter, she'd talk about modernizing our system architecture like she'd personally redesigned the server infrastructure. She even started taking credit for the integration platform that my claws would soon snatch away like a mousetrap on manicured fingers. One afternoon, she walked past my desk with her phone pressed to her ear, speaking just loud enough for me to hear. "Yeah, James knows the old systems inside and out, but we need architects who understand where technology is heading." I stared at my monitors, smiling so hard my jaw ached. Because the technology train she was driving was headed for a cliff, and I owned the tracks. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday when I found it. I'd been digging through Q4 budget allocations because something smelled wrong, like milk left in a hot car. We were supposedly over budget on consulting fees, yet several critical infrastructure projects had been mysteriously underfunded. I pulled the raw transaction logs, cross-referenced them against approved purchase orders, then traced the approval chains. And there it was, a series of payments labeled Digital Transformation Consulting Services, totaling $28,500. Recipient: Parker Innovation Solutions, LLC. I blinked, thinking maybe this was some new vendor we'd onboarded through proper channels. I checked our vendor database, nothing. Searched our procurement system, nothing. Just line items with fake vendor codes and timestamps dating back 3 months. I traced the approval workflow. Madison had manually overridden standard procurement procedures, marked the payments as strategic initiative consulting, and routed them through a budget category that didn't require technical team review. Jason Parker, Madison's boyfriend, the same guy who'd been posting LinkedIn articles about disrupting enterprise architecture despite having zero technical background beyond a bootcamp certificate in web design. I printed the transaction report, didn't email it, didn't save it to company systems, just printed it and held it under my kitchen light like evidence of corporate DNA. I didn't act immediately, didn't fire off angry emails or schedule confrontational meetings. Instead, I slipped it into a folder labeled Insurance Policy and set it on my bookshelf next to my technical manuals. Let it marinate, because I knew the sword was coming for me. This just confirmed the blade was sharpened. The next morning, I got called into an informal discussion with HR. The conference room smelled like lavender anxiety and corporate cowardice. Madison was already seated, sipping some kind of oat milk concoction like she'd earned it through actual work. Jennifer Collins from HR looked like she'd aged 5 years overnight, clutching a printed statement that screamed, "Legal department didn't review this." "James," Jennifer started, reading. Like she was announcing lottery numbers, "We've noticed some resistance to evolving technical methodologies and a pattern of questioning innovative approaches that's beginning to impact team dynamics." Madison nodded solemnly, like we were holding a funeral for my career. I know this is hard, she added, crocodile tears threatening to spill. But sometimes a fresh technical perspective is exactly what an organization needs. I stared at her for exactly 5 seconds, long enough to watch her shift uncomfortably in her ergonomic chair. Then I stood up. Do I need to sign anything? I asked Jennifer. She panicked. Oh, we'll follow up with digital exit procedures. No immediate signatures required. Perfect. That told me they'd skipped proper legal process entirely. No documentation, no performance reviews, no technical cause analysis. Just resistance to innovation, a vague, cowardly catch-all they tossed around when their real reasons wouldn't survive an employment attorney's scrutiny. I walked out slower this time, not from sadness, just control, like a chess master leaving after checkmate. Back in my car, I opened my laptop and connected through my phone's hotspot. Dragged 2 files into a secure folder. First, the budget fraud documentation. Second, Clause 12.7b, trigger.pdf. I attached the fraud report to an email bound for Patricia with the subject line, Madison's Retirement Fund. The clause document got uploaded to my LLC's private repository with version control and notarized timestamps already authenticated and legally bulletproof. No dramatic speeches needed, no emotional monologues, just cold documentation and a timer quietly counting down. Cutting ties with a company isn't like ending a relationship. With relationships, you delete photos and change your status. With companies, it's surgical. You remove your fingerprints and let their own incompetence come into focus. I didn't update LinkedIn with some fake optimistic, exciting new chapter ahead. Post with coffee shop selfies. No rage posting, no cryptic subtweets about toxic workplaces, just silence. And nothing unnerves a dysfunctional organization more than professional silence. Behind the scenes, Davidson Capital started due diligence for Innovex's Series C funding round. $50 million on the table, contingent on technical stability assessments and operational scalability reviews. Suddenly, every system I'd built, every process I'd documented, every integration I'd architected was under investor microscopes. Except now, there was no me to explain why Vendor Integration Module 7A had a 48-hour lag time unless you knew to restart the scheduler service with coffee break timing. No one to decode the elegant workarounds I'd built to prevent the kind of cascade failures that had plagued our competitors. I watched from my home office. Coffee hot, conscience clear. First, the finance team sent revised revenue projections to Davidson Capital, off by $2.1 million. They blamed API synchronization delays. But the real issue was simpler. They'd never learned my 2-stage reconciliation process because I'd stored the documentation in my LLC's repository, not company systems. Then came the technical unraveling. 4 critical microservices started throwing errors simultaneously. The DevOps contractor Madison had hired after one visioning workshop couldn't troubleshoot the failures because my integration architecture used naming conventions and dependency maps that weren't documented in company wikis. Madison launched a communication offensive. In her weekly video update, she called it a growth optimization phase and claimed the team was reclaiming technical sovereignty. Corporate speak for we have no idea what we're doing, but we're going to brand it like a spa retreat. Meanwhile, performance metrics slipped like ice on concrete. Vendor SLAs missed by hours. Customer onboarding timelines doubled. Support tickets piled up like autumn leaves. The company's net promoter score dropped 23 points in 2 weeks. Madison blamed change resistance and legacy mindset patterns. She actually said this during a company-wide Slack session while wearing a hoodie that read, "Embrace the disruption," which made me chuckle into my evening whiskey. HR tried damage control, calling it a transitional architecture phase. But transitional architecture wasn't the problem. I was the architecture, and they'd fired me without bothering to read the blueprint. Every missed deadline cracked their credibility. Every investor question about system reliability hit like a sledgehammer. And every time Madison opened her mouth to explain the temporary optimization challenges, she pushed a little more dynamite into her father's company foundation. Davidson Capital's technical analysts weren't idiots. They asked pointed questions. When answers came back vague, inconsistent, or routed through 3 different departments with no clear ownership, they started highlighting discrepancies in their due diligence reports. I imagine those investor meetings smelled like desperation and sugar-free energy drinks. It was Thursday, exactly 1 week before Innovex's make-or-break presentation to Davidson Capital, when my phone buzzed with an unknown Bay Area number. Normally I let those hit voicemail, but something about the timing felt significant. "Hi, is this James Reynolds?" The voice was tight, lawyerly, nervous. "This is Anthony Brewster, external counsel for Innovex. I was hoping to informally discuss whether you might be available for some time-sensitive technical consultation." His voice had that strained professional quality of someone trying to sound casual while sweating through expensive suits. I let silence stretch until he started breathing audibly. Then, "I appreciate the call, Anthony, but I'm not available for informal anything." He stumbled. "I understand completely. It's just that certain systems you previously managed have developed gaps in documentation. Gaps. Diplomatic language for we're completely screwed." I didn't ask which gaps, I knew. The automated failover protocols I'd built weren't documented in company systems. The vendor API authentication sequences I'd designed to prevent the Tuesday crashes that plagued our biggest client, also undocumented, because they'd terminated me without requesting proper knowledge transfer. Anthony thanked me anyway and hung up, probably to report back that the guy they'd fired for resistance to innovation wasn't interested in saving them from their own stupidity. That evening, I poured 3 fingers of good whiskey, not the cheap stuff, the bottle I'd been saving for a significant life transition, and pulled the manila folder from my file cabinet. Inside, 1 sheet of heavyweight paper, my LLC letterhead, properly dated and notarized. Title: Formal Notification of License Revocation per Clause 12.7b. The body text was simple, professional, devastating. Due to my termination without cause, technical review, or documented performance justification. This letter serves as official notice that all licensing rights to the following systems and platforms have been revoked in accordance with Clause 12.7b of the agreement between Innovex Solutions and Reynolds Technical Systems, LLC. Access authorization terminated as of this letter's timestamp. I slipped it into a certified mail envelope addressed to every board member, CEO included. No email copies, no digital delivery receipts. Paper, physical, legally unambiguous. Then I scheduled courier delivery to hit Innovex's main office first thing Friday morning. Not a bomb, a mirror, a painfully accurate one. The Davidson Capital conference room was all glass and ambition, 31 floors above the bay with panoramic views that probably cost more per month than most people's salaries. It was Innovex's moment of truth, the Series C presentation that would either launch them into the major leagues or expose them as a house of cards. Madison had dressed for coronation. Navy blazer, designer heels, and a water bottle with hourly motivational timestamps like crushing it and visionary mode activated. Her presentation deck probably had more animations than a Pixar movie. "Thank you for this opportunity," she began, clicking her remote like she was hosting a TED Talk. "At Innovex, we don't just build systems, we architect digital transformation." That line made Walter Davidson, the lead investor, raise an eyebrow. For venture capitalists, that's basically a full-body cringe. The presentation rolled on, growth projections, market penetration charts, buzzword density approaching maximum legal limits, scalable innovation infrastructure, AI-driven customer success paradigms, blockchain-enabled trust frameworks. No mention of system stability, no discussion of technical debt, no acknowledgement of the operational chaos bubbling underneath her glossy slides. Madison clicked to her favorite section, the next evolution. We've positioned ourselves to triple ARR within 18 months through proprietary platform advantages and strategic vendor optimizations. That's when Walter slowly opened his due diligence folder and pulled out my letter. He read silently for 30 seconds that felt like 30 minutes. The room went library quiet. "This document states that your core infrastructure licensing was revoked last Friday," Walter said, calm as a heart surgeon. "According to Clause 12.7b, termination of James Reynolds without technical review invalidated your right to operate the systems your platform depends on." Madison's face cycled through confusion, panic, and desperate calculation. "This is just a technicality." "No," Walter cut her off. "This is ownership. What you've shown us today is vaporware built on revoked licenses." Richard Sterling, pale and sweating, finally found his voice. "We can fix this. We'll negotiate." "With what leverage?" Walter closed the folder with deliberate precision. "You fired the man who built your foundation and didn't bother reading the contract." He stood, straightened his jacket. Davidson Capital doesn't invest in companies that don't own their own products. The room erupted after he left, voices overlapping, someone throwing a pen, Anthony frantically flipping through contract binders searching for loopholes that didn't exist. And Madison? She spun toward the board like a broken compass. "We can sue. We'll claim he sabotaged us." But nobody was listening. They were too busy calculating how much her innovative leadership had just cost them. I wasn't there to see it personally, but Patricia filled me in later over coffee. The company folded within 6 months. Madison's father quietly retired to avoid further embarrassment. Most of the technical team found better jobs with companies that respected experience. As for me, I took that acquisition offer, the one that arrived in my inbox 2 hours after Davidson Capital walked away. Turns out, when you build something valuable and document it properly, people notice. Sometimes the best revenge isn't dramatic confrontation. It's just being right, being prepared, and letting incompetence expose itself. The quiet ones, we don't just build the infrastructure, we make sure it's protected.